This is our Love and Loneliness Awareness event. I'm Nadine Saeed, co-founder of the Art Spread. With me, I have our other co-founder, Rowan Ida Diaz.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for spending your Saturday with us and your Valentine's Day weekend. We're glad to have you here.
This event is being recorded, so if you speak, just remember to speak slowly because the captions have to follow what you say. We have a few of our board members with us, so I'll start with Tanya, if you just want to say hello.
Hello.
Prakar.
Hello there.
And Mateo.
Hi, y'all. Go blue.
Okay. So thanks everyone again for being here. We just want to reiterate to you what we're all about. So we are the Art Spread, and our mission is to lead artists with adversity to success and to spread empathy through art. And we do that through workshops like these, which are our art and adversity awareness workshops. So thanks again for being here. It's a really big deal.
And before we get started, we just want to make a few announcements. So next year is our 1-year event. We're super excited that we've had 1 year with everyone and very proud of what we've accomplished. So we will have guest speakers lined up to share what we've been able to do in the last 12 months. And just to remind you all, if you're still looking for Valentine's Day gifts, we have our featured artist Gray Lou's piece called Nothing Inside in our shop. And Miriam Sadati has her handmade Valentine's Day cards. Please do check it out. While you're on our website, remember you can support and share the Art Spread in many ways. You can donate money, you can donate art pieces, and you can donate your time. If you're interested or have questions, always feel free to contact Rowan and I.
Yep, and you can email us at hello@theartspread.org for ways that you can get involved.
In this event, we're going to donate to our uncle, tragically passed away on Tuesday from an unexpected tragedy. In his honor, because of his hard work, his very sweet, kind personality, this event is going to be dedicated to our uncle.
Yeah, and we want to just remind ourselves and all of you that workshops like these, art and creative expression in general, are kind of just really good ways to use the feelings that we have and express ourselves in a positive way. So that's why these are really important. We're so glad that you guys are here with us. And then Nadine will introduce our event theme for today.
So it's love and loneliness. Valentine's Day is an interesting holiday. For some, it is greatly revered as the best holiday of the year, better than our birthdays. For others, it is a dreaded, horrible holiday. So if you are sometimes single like me, it is probably the second category on how you think of Valentine's Day. So what Rowan and I wanted to do was create something where all of us, regardless of relationship status, can appreciate the history, meaning, and impact love, loneliness, and Valentine's Day has had in art. And with that, Rowan is going to explain the love types in Greek and its significance in colors in art.
Yeah, so I'm going to have Nadine type these words out so you'll have them to reference. So let's start with the types of love, the Greek phrases for them. So the first one we'll talk about is philia. And this is an affectionate love, but this can be, platonic and towards your friends and family. The second kind is pragma, and I'm looking at my notes because I don't have these memorized. But this is enduring love, unconditional love. So this can mean that this is a type of love that lasts forever, whatever that means to some people. And you accept that person as they are, not expecting, changes or what you have in your own mind of them. The other kind of love is called storge, and it's a familiar love, platonic love as well. So again, more of that like brotherly love. And then we have Eros, which is a romantic love filled with passion and romance. Ludus is a playful love. So this could be a budding relationship, or maybe it's just someone you're crushing on or whatever that may be. It's a little bit less serious. And on the flip side, we have mania, which is more of a obsessive love and very intense type of relationship. And maybe that's good and bad in different ways. And then we have philotia, which is self-love, and we'd love to focus on that as well today because it's super important. And then we have agape, which is selfless love. So this can be maybe between a mother and child is kind of my first image that I see, or again, familiar love. And we'll go over some of these different types of love and ways that we can express it through color. So let's first talk about the template and why we chose the rose. So I hope you guys all have your templates. If you don't, it is a rose with a stem, couple of leaves, and then we have the phrase "you are," and we have space for you to finish that sentence. So with this template, we chose the rose because later on in this event, we'll be talking a lot about Shakespeare, Taylor Swift, and Van Gogh. And the rose was, we can guess, one of Shakespeare's favorite flowers because he mentions it over 70 times in his writings. And there's a few different meanings about the rose, but one of my favorites is the meaning that we found through the Victorian era. So this was a time where people weren't really able to be expressive and just come out and share their love with a special person. So things had to be more on the hush-hush, and they found a secret way to share their love. So they would use different colored roses to give to a person to signify what they mean to them. So a rose was kind of a secret message saying, I love you, where, they couldn't publicly come out and actually say that. So I thought that was really beautiful, and it's nice to see just like one image signify something so important. So today, let's think about, who is this rose for? Is this for yourself? Is this for a teacher, a neighbor, a loved one, a stranger that you just want to make their day? So keep that in mind as we talk about the different colors we can use and the different words we can use. And we've learned at our previous events that color choices can say a lot. And so we'll talk about a couple of different ones. I think we can all guess red is a very popular color for a rose. And red in general means passion. So when you combine that with this shape of a rose, it's very romantic. So maybe you're in a committed relationship with yourself or whomever. So red would be a great choice for that. So again, that's passionate love, romantic love. And the color, maybe the next most popular color is a pink rose. It's very versatile. And if you remember from our gratitude awareness event, we talked about pink being a color of gratitude, and that's exactly what it signifies. So a pink rose could mean gratitude, admiration, and affection of different types. So it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic, but just affection in general. This is one of my favorite colors that I like for a rose. It's a yellow rose, and that signifies friendship and joyfulness. So I think in general, when you see the color yellow, it brightens up your day, just most literally. And I think that also connects with the color of the sun and how that feels on our skin and all the things that we can get from that. So yellow rose is for a friend or just someone that you want to brighten up their day. Purple rose. So purple is a very strong color. It comes with a lot of feeling. It's representing enchanted love. So I think I would match this one with the mania love. Kind of sort of enchanted, obsessed, love at first sight, really intense kind of love. And then, of course, we have the black rose that represents mourning and loss. So if you're like us and you are mourning someone right now, like our uncle, maybe that's a choice that you want to go with. Personally, I'm going to use the color blue because that was his favorite color. So I think I'm going to use different tones of blue, and I'll show you about how I'm going to mix some of those. So again, think of who this card is for. Is it for you, So for another person, and let's complete the sentence here. So think about it for a second. If you'd like to throw it in the chat, go ahead and do that. If you want to say it out loud, you can do that as well. You don't have to tell us who it's for, but we'd love to hear what kinds of words you're using. So we did do a poll on Instagram, and we hope that you're all following us so that you can participate in future polls. But we took a poll on Instagram, and we asked the question for people to finish the sentence. So it said, "You are." So a couple of those answers were, "You are brilliant," which I really like, and "You are beautiful." So those were both very sweet. Then we asked the question, "I am," and fill in the blank. So if this card is for you, maybe you can use some of the words like, "I am grateful," and maybe that would be a pink rose, or "I am strong." So those are just a couple of examples. And like I said, if you've got things in your own mind, definitely go ahead and share them with us to help people get the conversation going, and just brainstorm for themselves. And remember to use your word wisely. And we learn a lot from Shakespeare and Taylor Swift. They made a living from using certain words. So it's a way for us to fall in love with Shakespeare or to connect with people like Taylor Swift who express their feelings of love and loneliness through words alone. So words matter, color matters, and let's just, I think, have fun with it and use this to express yourself. So I'll go over a couple of techniques that I've used. So this is a card I made previously, and this is with watercolor, a little bit of charcoal, and then I wrote the word in pen. And this says, "You are remarkable," with a little heart. That's just, for some reason, the first word that came to mind. So with this technique, I started with red watercolor on the edges, and in the middle, I actually put orange on top. Typically, you should start with your lightest color and work into the darkest tones. But I like to experiment and try different things, so I went rogue. And so I've got different shades of red, orange, hints of pink, and then again I went over the edges with purple to give them a darker tone. And I kind of did the same thing with each petal. And you can see the video of this on our social media and how that was made. And then for the stem and leaves, I started with green, and then I overlaid it with yellow, and then I added a little bit of brown. And then in the end, I went through and added charcoal using a charcoal pencil, just to add some deeper dimension and things like that. And then I blended it in with a smudger. And let me tell you about my brushes that I personally like to use for watercolor. And if any of you have suggestions, definitely let us know. But I use the round brushes, different sizes. So a smaller size like this one would be great for those little details in the leaves and adding those darker tones. So does anyone have questions about colors, technique, or word choices? And if not, we can definitely go ahead and share our words. We have one in the chat. It says, "You are my fire, the one desire." Where'd you get that from? Sounds familiar.
It was a great song.
So yeah, again, referencing song choices, that's super fun. I like that a lot. And I think whoever receives that would really enjoy it as well. So maybe it's your favorite lyric or a song that reminds you of that person. So yeah, I'd love to see what you're all creating with and what words you're using. Oh, that's beautiful, Nadine. I love the blue. There's blue and yellow. Is that right?
Blue, yellow, hints of red, and green.
Nice. Okay, Mateo, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I did mine for the future dog that I'm going to own. You are a good doggo is my word. A good doggo is my word.
That's super cute. And
I love dogs. And I only use one color because he's colorblind. He's not going to know the difference anyway, but I'm going to love him very much. Or her.
I was wondering about the red. I was definitely wondering about that, so it's good to know. Anybody else have their colors or word choices?
We would like to share.
That's that's beautiful.
This is Ella, and it's her birthday tomorrow.
Hi, Ella. Happy early birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Can you tell them about your rose?
My rose is a purple rose.
Beautiful.
And purple is her favorite color, and we're having a purple party over here.
That's awesome. We said it's a very strong color.
Beautiful. What did you write?
You are sweet.
Oh, that's very lovely. I like that a lot. Thank you. I'm so glad you did this with us. That's so sweet.
Bye, Ella.
Okay, so we will have Nadine. Now that I've covered more about love, Nadine will tell us more about what loneliness can mean.
Yes, so I guess it's fitting that I'm doing the loneliness part. So there's two types of loneliness. It's physical and emotional. Physical is where you're physically cut off from other people. A really good example to conceptualize this is 2020 with the pandemic. Everything was shut down. Grocery stores were like the Wild West. That was a true time where I felt physically alone and experienced physical loneliness. Emotional loneliness is where you feel like you need someone to talk to about something, but there's no one there. That's a feeling I think we've all encountered once in our life before, if not multiple times. So those are the two types of loneliness that we're going to focus in on for this event. And with that, I want to sort of transition into how Valentine's Day even got started. I don't know if anyone knows this, but way back when, there used to be a Roman festival called the Festival of Lupercalia. And what that was is during February, so at the start of spring, the women would be given to men through a lottery, and it was done for fertility purposes. So in the early 5th century, the Pope, I think it was Gelasius, if I'm saying his name correctly, he forbade that festival to go forward for obvious reasons. So it stopped. It sort of mimics Valentine's Day in that we want someone to court on that day. And then obviously we have St. Valentine, where the story is St. Valentine would secretly marry couples against the emperor's orders in order to stop men from going into war. So recognizing that love would stop people from separating, we've taken the word Valentine's Day to celebrate love, not just if you're in a relationship, but towards anyone. And a really good iconic artist who captured both what I just talked about in terms of loneliness and love is Vincent Vanco. And Tanya spent some time looking into his piece called The Iris, and she'll say how those emotions influenced one of his most iconic pieces.
Thank you, Nadine. So, as many of you know, Vincent van Gogh is one of the most famous artists of all time, the Dutch post-impressionist painter. The piece I'm focusing on today is going to be irises, personally, because I've seen it in person. It's at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. It's beautiful. As many know, and some that don't, Van Gogh suffered from depression, loneliness throughout his life, especially. But what I found interesting about his life was he wasn't entirely lonely. He did suffer from heartbreak, and like most of us, and it did impact him severely. But he had some really important people in his life too. His brother Theo helped him financially, emotionally, took care of him, as well as his wife. She's actually the reason why he's so well known. He wasn't completely obscure in his lifetime. He was known in art circles, but he became famous due to her tireless effort and translation of his letters and work. So irises, I'm going to try to share it right now. Hold on, let me see. One moment.
Tanya, I can help you.
Yeah, I'm still I'm having technical difficulties. So Nadine, if you could share on your screen, and then I'll just talk over it. Okay, so what makes this piece very interesting, despite it being so colorful and beautiful, was that it was actually created about a week in at his stay in as an asylum. He had various stints in asylums. Most of the time were self-imposed, and his early work was darker. His later work, especially when he found his technique, became a lot more colorful, and it's also evident when he did landscapes or nature, he found a lot of solace in that, because of the things that plagued him. Some of his works with people tend to be darker, and I think this is a good reflection of that, of how even in his darkest times of loneliness, he escaped through art, and he could still create something so beautiful. Not to romanticize it, but it does show him as a person. I think this is a good piece to embody who he was. And, he reflected that, and his work conveys a lot of emotion. And it's just interesting how someone, even in a dark place, plagued with so much, can still create something so beautiful and find some sort of joy in art. And that's why we're here. And that's why we picked Van Gogh for our event.
Tanya, I have a question for you. When you saw that piece online versus in person, how was that experience?
It was a bit surreal, I think, with some pieces. Also, when I saw it, I didn't expect to come across a Van Gogh the first time. I've been to the Getty multiple times, but the first time I saw it, I didn't expect to see it. Also, the way they had it displayed, it was, you can't miss it. It was beautiful. Like in the middle, people were crowding over it. I've seen other Van Gogh pieces as well, but just the way this one is, it's, especially given the background and how he created it, it's something so beautiful that came out of a moment of darkness. And, his life was lonely and he suffered a lot, but he also put so much good in the world. And there were some people that tried to help him. And I think that goes back to what Nadine was saying. There's different forms of loneliness, which is why I focused on more of his internal struggles than on, his, romantic partners or things like that, because I feel like that's pretty universal. We can all relate to that. Sometimes internal struggle that could affect pretty much anyone. And I also think that's why his work appeals to so many and still is revered, and people go out of their way to see his work.
Thank you, Tanya. That was really great.
Yeah, Vincent Van Gogh is my favorite artist for that very reason. He creates the best from his darkest moments. So thank you, Tanya. Another artist similar to Vincent Van Gogh, who was inspired by love and loneliness. You probably all know him and dreaded reading him in high school, but it is William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare came from Stratford upon Avon, which is in England in the 1500s. No one knows his exact birthday, but they can guess. William Shakespeare is actually one of the very few iconic artists we've talked about that never went to a university. All of his success came from the little schooling he went to in less than high school education. William Shakespeare, his whole love and loneliness, I think, got started when he was 18 years old and got married to Anne Hathaway, not the actress, obviously, but Anne Hathaway, who was 8 years older than him. And when they got married, she was already 3 months pregnant with their first and eldest child, Susanna. Ultimately, the two had 3 kids together. So Susanna, and then twins, Judith and Hamlet, who we know is one of his plays. Hamlet died, so it was only Judith and Susanna. And then while he had his kids, William Shakespeare left his family in Stratford and moved to London. That's where he became so successful as someone we know today. If you actually okay, so for example, if I Google my name right now, I think 3 links will come up. If I Google William Shakespeare, 128 million links will come up with William Shakespeare. That is how profound and incredible his work is. William Shakespeare wrote 37 plays. You've probably read some in high school. So the most famous ones, A Midsummer Night's Dream, which when I read it at 14, I literally did not understand one word. But Two Noble Kingsmen, Henry, Antony and Cleopatra, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, and of course Romeo and Juliet. Um, I think the love and loneliness aspect of William Shakespeare's life bled into Romeo and Juliet. And just quickly, if you don't know the story of Romeo and Juliet, they're a very young couple that fall in love. So before they meet, Juliet was supposed to marry someone that she did not want to because that's what her family wanted her to do. And she was about 15 years old when the story took place. She was supposed to go to a ball and meet this person she wasn't interested in marrying, and at that same ball was Romeo. Now, before Romeo met Juliet, he had the mania love that Rowan was describing with another woman who ignored him. So he went to this ball. Romeo met Juliet, and that night, at a very young age, they fell madly in love and they were obsessed with each other. Romeo and Juliet's family hated each other and they didn't want the two to be married. So Juliet, and I'm really condensing this, Juliet had this plan set up with another person where she would drink something that would make her seem like she was dead for 2 days. That would hopefully bring the families together and allow her to marry Romeo. Romeo didn't know this, so he went to go see Juliet, who was being mourned by the man she was supposed to marry. Romeo got very upset thinking that she was dead and killed the man that she was supposed to marry and then drank a poison and died. And when Juliet woke up 2 days later, she saw that both men were dead. And then the tragedy comes where all 3 of them die. A lot of scholars have studied Romeo and Juliet. I think that they're right in saying that William Shakespeare had sort of a loveless marriage. He hinted a lot in his plays not to marry someone at a young age that he did at 18, which is where you see the tragic ending for a young 15-year-old couple. The other part of it is a lot of his plays talked about the rose and talked about how one shouldn't marry a woman who's much older. So the last part of where I think he had a loveless marriage was his will. When he died, he gave everything to his eldest daughter, Susanna, who was married to a doctor. And in the will that he changed just before his death, he left his wife one thing, and that was the second best bed in the house. So I think a lot of his plays played on how he felt and was emotionally triggered by love and not feeling loved. So I would definitely recommend reading Shakespeare as an adult. I think as a 14 or 15-year-old, it's too difficult to understand. At least for me it was. But with that, I will pass it to a more contemporary artist who Rowan will introduce our next guest speaker.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that the older we get, the more we can understand what Shakespeare meant and these different types of love. And it was a great way to understand more of Shakespeare and the way he dealt with love and loneliness. That's what art is about, is to get that, I guess, almost inside view of what people are going through. And not every artist is as transparent, but Taylor Swift very much is. And I'm going to introduce Olivia, who is probably the biggest Taylor Swift fan. She's going to tell us all about Taylor's feelings of love and loneliness, how they inspire her songwriting. Before I do that, just a little bit about Olivia herself. She's my very sweet sister-in-law. Very smart. She graduated from Michigan State University with a bachelor's in zoology. Go Green. I had to say it, Mateo. I'm sorry. And
Wow.
And Olivia in general is just a very compassionate person. She loves all living things. She does her job very well at a cat care clinic, whether it's, paperwork, adoption prep, or caring for newborns. So I thought Olivia would be a great fit as someone who's compassionate, caring, and basically knows everything about Taylor Swift that there is to know. So, Olivia, why don't you start us off with how she, as an artist, now has her own rights to her own work?
Okay, thank you so much, Rowan. Go White. So I'm so happy to be talking about one of my favorite artists, Taylor Swift. I do have notes because I gotta keep track of everything. But basically, the conversation about Taylor Swift and her masters is not only significant for herself, but also for present and future artists in terms of owning their own work and having that pride and that ownership of it versus a company or people with other interests. So just a brief review of it if you're not aware. So basically Taylor Swift for a long time had to fight for the rights to her music. So originally she signed in the 2000s to a record label called Big Machine Records. And when she signed that contract, she was about 14, 15 years old. She basically gave them the rights to her first 6 albums that she was going to record, but they would advance her cash to kickstart her career. So at the time, it's like, that'll be fine. You want to be with this label for a long time. So it sounds like a good deal. And basically with the masters, so that's an original song or album that the artist records. So this is the original rights to her music. And Big Machine Records own those rights. But as a writer and co-writer of all of her music, she does have certain publishing rights that affects how they can still use her music, which she's blocked it being used in certain instances. But while she was with Big Machine Records, she tried multiple times to buy her masters. But the terms and the contracts that Big Machine Records was giving her were just unreasonable and unacceptable. She did end up leaving that record label in 2018. Now, another person in the conversation around her music is a man named Scooter Braun. He is a manager for other artists, including Demi Lovato, Justin Bieber, and Ariana Grande. Now, before he was involved with her music, in terms of owning it, he had some beef, some issues with her personally, especially in terms of his involvement in her feud.
There's a question.
Did not have a song
Did he
with
have
Bruno
a song
Mars.
with Bruno Mars?
Yeah. But he was involved partially in the feud she was having with Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, a few years ago. And she also alleges other instances of bullying and just that he is not a good person to work with and that he should not really have any involvement with her music. So he actually bought Big Machine in 2019, which meant he also bought her masters. And Taylor Swift was very heartbroken at the time when this was announced, especially that she did not have prior knowledge of the selling, and that she never got a chance really to buy them herself. She wanted to buy them outright, but then she tried several times to negotiate also with Scooter, and that involved an NDA where he did not want her to say anything negative about him ever again, and she said no. So and then eventually Scooter, while he owned Big Machine Records, sold her masters. So he specifically sold all of her work at the time that they owned to another company for $300 million. She had an opportunity to partner with them. They reached out to her about her owning her music, but the agreement was going to involve Scooter still having some profit from her music. So he was still going to be involved, even though it was through another company she was going to be getting her masters. And she turned that down as well because she did not want Scooter at all to benefit from her music. So it left her with the main option, which is correct. So when Scooter purchased Big Machine Records, she lost the claim to her own original music. Even technically, when she was under that record label, she did not have the financial rights to her music. Publishing rights, yes. She could get royalties and she would get financial benefits from them having her masters. But when he sold her masters, she didn't get anything from it. And she wanted to buy them outright, which would have been around that amount, and Big Machine had turned her down. And then the other company was kind of like, the only way they could get the masters was if Scooter was still involved. So a arrangement with that company with Taylor Swift still would have involved Scooter, and she did not want to have anything to do with him, especially how she alleges, he's bullied her. He's basically come after her and her career. She really did not want to have any association with him. So her solution was to re-record her first 6 albums. Her self-titled album, Fearless, Speak Now, Red, 1989, and then her last album with Big Machine Records, which was Reputation. And she can do that because after a certain amount of time of those albums being out, she can actually re-record them herself, even if she's with a different label company. And she has since released 2 re-recorded albums, Fearless and Red. And with those, she didn't just re-release the exact album again. She had to actually re-record it, new vocals, everything had to be freshly recorded, basically. And she also included songs that were not originally featured on the albums. So they called vault songs that didn't make the cut. And those also have featured artists. So she's doing things to increase the value of her re-recordings to devalue the original masters. So they may have been valued at $300 million before, but now with how much you're going to be losing on them over time, they're going to become worthless. Which is kind of her sticking it back to them for not giving her her music. And with the current label she's on, she owns all of her music. So the 3 albums, aside from the re-recordings that she's released, Lover, Folklore, and Evermore, those are hers. So her work, that has spanned almost 2 decades at this point, is really important to her. It's her life's work. It's about her. And she just wants to be able to own it. It's not even about the money for her. It's about being able to say, this is mine, both literally and legally, in all the important ways for artists, that it matters to them. So, with such a big career and how she's such a household name and all the awards she's accumulated, truly, it's interesting to look at what inspires her. And just considering she was 15 when she basically started to now her being 32, it's truly a lot of change that can happen in terms of her inspiration and such. So in her early albums, we see a lot of her songs, of course, about love. Everyone wants to say she only sings about her exes and all that, which to an extent is true, but also there's a lot of layers to how she writes about relationships, especially as a teenager. She wrote songs for a lot of people that really just express how they were feeling as a teenager. Your first love, your first heartbreak, growing up, and learning how the world works. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. You want songs that, yeah. Her later work too just transcended a lot of what music is in terms of expression. And she would write about her fans, who she's always referred to as a main inspiration for her. As she got older, of course, and experienced things, a lot of her inspiration evolved. She always wrote about what she saw around her what her friends were going through. But as she got older, she wrote more about fame and, its cruelty over time, the longer you're in the industry. Of course, about her famous feuds she's had with people who shall not be named. And of course, her relationships. But the way she's talked about love has evolved into a maturity that can still be, listened to and inspiring. She's made up fictional storylines. She's written about her family, like her grandfather who was in World War II, and she related that to a lot of what nurses and professionals were going through in the pandemic. She wrote about a grandmother who had passed several years ago, and the song about a grandmother really is an emotional song about grief, about what you remember, what you wish you could have more of. Well, she does have a lot of her current songs about love are about successful stories of love for her personally with her current relationship. She's written about friends who were married as well. One of her, I wouldn't say more famous, but in terms of like Swifties, is like a famous song. You Are in Love, which is a deluxe song on her 1989 album, which was basically her just writing about even more so than the emotions of being in love, but also about the experience, the little things. She actually, that wasn't her personal experience. She wrote about two of her friends who were in love and got married. And her parents actually had divorced a few years ago. So some have also commented that even some of her songs now that she's written about divorce could be related to that. It's also alleged that her best friend went through a divorce, so that some of her inspiration could also come from that. But truly, when she writes about love, she writes about what she sees, what she feels, and in her own life before she was in her current relationship, she was a very successful person, but she had commented in her documentary about how she was at the top, but she was all by herself. She had no one to share it with. Now, mind you, this is someone who had friends, who had co-writers, who had trusted people in her field, and yet she still felt that loneliness of not having, a real, genuine love. And now she writes about that, and she still writes about heartbreak and loneliness. So she's always been able to have that outside perspective, but also will weave in her own personal experience, her own way of viewing things and what she's gone through. And even more recently, she wrote about, the pandemic, the hardship of it, the hardship of feeling like you can continue, or what is the new normal and what does that look like? How does that feel? But also about the love that can be so comforting and peaceful even in those kind of times. Because of course she's gone through things that aren't entirely relatable to everyone, but she always has a way of making it relatable. And even she's written I call it a lyrical biography about a famous philanthropist. And she basically wrote about her life in a song, and it's like not too many people can do it in such a way that she does. Her Lover album, which was her first album after her Reputation era, which was kind of her coming back out of one of the darkest periods of her life. And here she has this album called Lover. And really, that album, she highlights different aspects of love, different kinds of love, like that friendship kind of love, a love that endures with someone through sickness, through hard times, a love that can let go of the past, a love that can bring peace. And she uses a lot of colors as imagery. She'll use golden to reference to that kind of love. She'll use blue, red, those kind of things. And she just paints a mental picture of what she's feeling in a way that a lot of artists don't or can't. So a lot of her style of songwriting, she's actually shared in terms of on bonus tracks on her albums like 1989 and Lover. She featured snippets of her either like recording lyrics that she made up, or melodies, or the sound clips she sends to producers and things like that. So she really gives um, a perspective and insight into how she comes up with her songs. Sometimes it starts with a lyric, sometimes it's a melody. She says that sometimes a vibe needs to be set, and then she can like finish writing a song. Um, and then and we know her as this storyteller. That's her trademark, where she doesn't just say "I love you." She will like write like 5 lines of like their hair will shine this way, and or like their smile is this, and it's just a beautiful way of not even just being so relaxed about it, but just so serious about it, and being so detailed. She will call back to previous songs on her new songs. For example, on her Lover album, the song Daylight, she references a song from Red, where she said, once believed love would be burning red, but it's golden. And that's just showing her growth from how she used to view love to what it actually is like when she's experienced it in a healthy way. And she does this so many times. And it's probably one of the biggest things that she does, that just shows her growth over the years, but also how much, she reflects on herself and, where she's at. She's always kind of described as a magical process of songwriting, something that can just happen, which is super annoying, because, who says that? Like, oh, it just comes to me. Like, who does that? But, it's hard for her to explain at times how just these song ideas come to her and she can write a song in one sitting. She wrote the song Lover by herself at the middle of the night that it just came to her. She wrote the entire album of Speak Now by herself when she was 19, just because people said she couldn't write her own music by herself. So she really has honed her skills over the years in terms of what she writes, but also she leaves it open to like experimentation as well, especially with her crossing genres from country into more of the pop and indie vibe as it is currently. Um, but even with all that, even with how long she's been in the business, she's still relatable, because of how transparent and vulnerable she is. In her Miss Americana documentary that's on Netflix, she talks about her life, she talks about her career, her feelings, and really how she doesn't feel like she can last in the music industry because of how quick it is, of how it's just, people get moved on a conveyor belt. This person has like 5 minutes to be impressive, and then it's the next person. So she's very vulnerable about her experience. She's, shared experience about her extreme dieting she went through in a very dark time. But even in her lyrics, she's very realistic. Like she'll give you specific locations. Like one of her songs on Folklore, she references Centennial Park. And actually, when we went to Nashville for our honeymoon, we went there. And literally, like as soon as I was there, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I just feel like the song's alive. Like it just feels like you get exactly what she's writing about. What she was thinking about. Like it's crazy how realistic she is in her music that can be so relatable.
Olivia, I think you deserve an award for the best and #1 fan for Taylor Swift.
I told you.
I literally didn't know one thing other than her name, and now I have like, she's not my favorite artist by any means, but now I have some respect for her after hearing all that. That was incredible.
Yeah.
I think the same thing. I think I'm not a Swiftie, as you guys call it, but I can definitely respect her artistry and the fact that she does put herself out there. She puts it all out there. And sometimes it's really hard for artists to do that just because it's your whole heart and soul.
Mm-hmm.
But she's very inspiring in that way where it's like, okay, if she's doing it, we can do this too. I do have a couple of questions for Olivia and for everyone, actually. What is your go-to song, whether it is Taylor Swift or someone else? Put it in the chat, and it would just be nice to see. So what is your go-to song for when you're feeling loved? And then what is your go-to song when you're in those dark days, you're feeling lonely, no one understands you? So we have someone, Nadine says, "Thank You Next" by Ariana Grande. Very interesting. So anything by Justin Bieber, blank spaces. So anything by Justin Bieber, I'm guessing, is the love song. Love on Top by Beyonce. Nice, Marina. Her Crazy Song. Wow, these are great. And who is Blank Spaces by? Isn't that by Taylor Swift?
Yeah. Blank
Okay.
space, yeah.
Nice. These are great. Okay, I'm gonna have to add these to my playlist. Okay, awesome. And then I guess I also want to see if you guys, maybe Olivia, do you have a word for your template? I guess that Melina says current Taylor Swift's Red album on repeat. I do
Yes.
like that one. I like that one in Reputation, I must say.
It's the way I sobbed during the All Too Well 10-minute version on my honeymoon. Mind you, I'm happily married and I'm sobbing about like the biggest heartbreak ever.
That's
I'm like,
exactly what art is I like that you can connect with that as a fan, no matter what you're feeling. She does a good job of having you feel her emotions of love and loneliness. And that's,
I mean, the fact that she wrote that album based on a 3-month relationship,
yeah.
I mean, her emotions were really real.
I could give a whole talk about that alone. Like, it's insane. Like, there's so much. Like, it's, oh my gosh, it's insane.
Let's say that for next time, Olivia, please.
so for now, I want to see who has their cards done. What words did you use? I'm almost done with mine. Well, I'm not done with mine, but Nadine, let me pull yours up. And what does yours say? You are, oh yeah, my fire, my one desire. I love that. Different shades of blue. Did you use watercolor?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, nice. Anybody else want to show their? Hello.
Olivia will share hers.
Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
You are amazing. Very nice. Very passionate color.
Thank you.
you. Beautiful job. Very clean. Anyone else?
Gina?
Ooh. So Olivia's word is "you are unique." I love that one. I really love that one. Wow. Orange and yellow?
What's it say?
Nice.
Says, "You are kind."
That's super sweet. I think we need a lot of that. A lot of those kinds of messages. Thank you for your beautiful rose.
You're welcome.
You show
That
yours?
is so sweet.
Wait, Sheena, what did you paint on yours?
Is that a pink rose? Pink rose.
This one
That's
says,
beautiful.
"You are filled with beauty."
That's so lovely. Wow, very mature.
And then Sheena, what do you?
What's yours?
Hmm?
What did you?
what's yours?
Me? Mine is just "You are rare," and then bombs of love going off. I don't know.
Sheena, you always come with very detailed images, and I love it. You go with the whole background. I really love that. Mine is very restricted. Is the word.
It's just messy. That's all it is.
Oh, I love it. It's very expressive. Anybody else have theirs? Melina, I know you've been working. You are enough. I love that. I
Cute.
love it. Is this for you or for someone else?
For me.
Yes.
And then Tanya, what was yours?
So I freehanded mine because my finger's not, well, my computer's acting up.
Wow.
That's beautiful. Yours looks a lot like one of the ones Marina showed too. That's so funny.
Yeah, I used the pens you gave me.
Oh, nice.
So it was a work in progress. That's why you see this, because I was just experimenting with technique.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Anyone else?
Mateo, what's yours?
So I guess moving on.
Well, I guess you did show us the dog one, so that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I already showed you guys. I haven't changed it.
Can't ask for too much, huh?
Yeah, oh,
Before
yeah,
we end the event, we just wanted to give everyone tips and advice on ways to overcome loneliness and heartbreak. I know sometimes that can be a bit of a cynicist, I guess, and negative, but I don't mean to be that way. And I do want to give you guys some things to do before we head out of this event. One thing I learned through the pandemic, writing and reading is definitely something I picked up. Experiencing the loneliness I did from 2020, even right now. Reading is a huge part of my life. Every night I try to read myself some fiction and overcome whatever feeling I have through that. Journaling is a great one, writing your thoughts down. Creative writing, like we've been saying with William Shakespeare and Taylor Swift, that's a great way to express how you feel. Painting, like we're doing, doodling, knitting, even outside of art, exercising is a great way to do it. And then what I learned through the pandemic is I started this nonprofit organization with Rowan because I felt so lonely, and it has changed so much of how I think and feel. And it's about attitude too. So if you feel like, man, how come I'm not, on a honeymoon, getting married, whatever, just keep in mind all the things that you do have and what you can focus on. Flipping will really help you be productive in the time that you feel lonely. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Rowan with our closing remarks. And thank you all so much for coming.
So thanks everyone again. Please take photos of your cards.
You're muted, Rowan.
Oh, is that better?
Yes.
Thanks everyone for coming. Please take photos of your cards. We'd love to have you tag us on social media and share more about your feelings of love and loneliness. And keep in mind, there are tons of ways that you can support the art spread, whether it's through coming to events like this, where we talk about art and adversity. You can shop amazing original art from our shop, from great artists. You can support your time or funds. You can join our board or make donations. And also just share with your friends and family and even strangers what we're doing here. And we'd love to have you all at our March 19th event for our 1 year later. I'm going to close this with what John Doe says in the chat. It is all about perspective. In other words, it is how you perceive things. So if you look at loneliness in a better light, it helps. And I think that's a great way to send us all off. And again, reach out for more tips, questions, or just to talk. You can always reach out to us through our email or social media. Thanks everyone so much for being here. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.